talking too much about British agriculture. It will be really interesting if you can tell everybody about a bit more about agriculture in your own country. Now, we can start off perhaps with a little bit more history of the British agriculture, if you like. Or shall we talk a little bit more about agriculture in your countries? Because I'm thinking we've got quite an interesting spectrum, quite an interesting number of countries here where the agriculture is quite different. Monique, could you please tell us a little bit about agriculture in Colombia?
Hi, Marianne.
Hi.
Okay, but I'm not sure. What do you want to know? You know that in my country we live, or agriculture is really important for our economy, and I would say that it's not fully industrialized. So we have a lot of people working on that, but also we have had some problems. Because of the social situation. So,
Sorry, because of I didn't
sorry?
catch that. You broke up at that moment. There's been some problems because of the
Social situation, because of the militia and
yes.
army groups, basically. So a lot of people has or have had to displace to big cities. So, but it's still the base, or as I told you, the important for our economy. So we plant a lot of things. We grow many vegetables and fruits, and we export, for instance, coffee, and it's important. I mean, I'm not familiar exactly with with each or some processes or how this works, but I'm sure that it involves a lot of people, and sometimes they don't receive what they deserve. I'm talking about money, and they work so hard, but in the end they don't receive what they have to. So yeah, what else? I don't know.
I think that's a good summary. I've added chocolate because I actually visited a small chocolate farm when I was in Colombia, not very far, maybe 2 hours from Medellin. And the farmer he had a very small farm, maybe 8 hectares only. Now, I think everyone is fairly aware with what has been happening in Colombia, but he was a very interesting farmer because he had, in fact, kept farming even through the worst of the troubles. So he had sent his family to the town where they would be safe, but he stayed farming his land. Now, of course, in the old days, do you know what the main crop was? I know Monique can tell us, but
Banana? I don't know. I'm sure. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
Marco
Right.
is wanting to say something.
Is it relation with Pablo Escobar?
Yes, exactly.
Ah, okay. You're talking about the downside.
Well, it depends on where in the country, but in the hills around Medellin, that it basically cocaine was a big crop. And so these farmers in the last 5 years have actually been able to change their crop from a crop that nobody really wants except the drug addicts to things like coffee and chocolate, and particularly chocolate, because chocolate grows at a lower altitude than coffee. And so the farmer I visited was part of a cooperative. The women actually do the work of processing the chocolate and the coffee, while the farmers provide them with their crops. They have very small farms, so they work together, because by working together, they can get a much better price at the market. If just one farmer with a tiny little farm tries to sell his crop to the market, he's probably going to get a very low price. But when they work together and they have a much larger amount to sell, they can then get a better price. So when I visited this farm, it was really, it was a treat. And it made me so proud to be European, because the European Union helped the farmers with $150 each so that they could buy the cocoa chocolate plants to start growing chocolate. And it's been a very successful project. And I think all over Colombia, the farmers have been able to benefit by switching their crop to crops like chocolate and coffee, which obviously everyone wants and also doesn't cause any trouble for anybody. He was a very interesting farmer.
Sorry, Marianne.
Sorry.
I want to add something because, yeah, you're right, and they are just trying to replace those crops. But the bad thing is, I know, and we know that we have a lot of international organizations, even some countries, or even in the country, we have a lot of organizations working on that. But at the same time, it's hard because it's not enough. Maybe some groups or sectors can just take advantage of these opportunities. But at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, I know it's not maybe a huge country, but for us, yeah, we require more help or more aids. So it's not easy. And even though when the other business is more profitable than, I don't know, growing chocolate or something like that. But what is really extraordinary about my country is because of the weather, you can grow a lot of things. So depending on the region, you can go somewhere and you can have your own, you can be self-sufficient. And it's another interesting thing. So yeah, climate is take part or play a role here in our country.
Yeah. No, I take your point. And in fact, I think virtually everywhere in the world, farmers are actually very poor. Even in Britain, the farmers are not very rich people. There are very few that actually make a lot of money. A lot have gone out of business. And in fact, the text that we're going to read further will talk a little bit about the declining farming because of incomes. But I think that is everywhere in the world. Now, Nidhi can probably tell us a bit more about agriculture in India. Could you give us a short summary of what sort of agriculture there is in India?
Yeah, in India, I think India main economy depend on agriculture. We have 60 and 17% population of our lives in village. So agriculture always have an important factor for our country, and as India has different climate and region, every part of it, so different kinds of crops and many varieties of fruit, grains, vegetables, pulses you can see, as most vegetable people live in India. So there are lots of varieties of fruit, grains, pulses and vegetables we grow here. And India is the second largest producer of rice, coffee.
Okay, the second largest. Do you know which is the largest? This is a loaded question because I know the answer. Actually, Vietnam. Vietnam is, my understanding when I was in
rice bowl. We call Vietnam rice bowl also.
Yeah, they are the largest producer, and then India. Do you have any knowledge? Pardon me. Knowledge of what percentage of of rice grown in India? How does it feed the population? In Nepal, it's only 30%, but in India, the rice that you grow, do you have to import much rice, or are you almost self-sufficient in rice?
We export rice, so I think we are self-sufficient in rice.
Okay, that might be something interesting to check, because even if India is exporting it, it doesn't necessarily mean they are self-sufficient. They might be importing, for instance, cheaper rice and exporting perhaps better quality rice. Do you understand? Sometimes these are the games
Yeah.
that are played. Okay, that's great. That's a great summary. Hermine, agriculture in Austria. I think agriculture is quite important in Austria.
Can you hear me? I
Yes.
hope so. Yes, yes. Agriculture is very important here. We have farmers. They grow lots of vegetables, so we can buy them on the market. It's fresh and yes, and it's great to get fresh vegetables and fruits. We have milk. We have cows. We have kettles. We have dairies or dairies.
Yeah, dairies.
Dairies. We have got a few dairies here where the milk is gets changed into butter or cheese or something like this, and other great products. And yes, but lots of farmers buy hay from abroad because the fields are getting smaller.
Aha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the farmers, yeah, I think the farmers who grow the vegetables aren't rich.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
recently there was an outcry about they paid too less for the season helper.
Yes.
Because yes, that was a great disaster. Yeah, that's the situation what we have at the moment. But we in this part of Austria, we could grow and produce lots of things we get here from around. There is no need to get strawberries in December or so. And lots of here in my surroundings, lots of neighbors have their own orchards in their garden.
Okay.
Yes.
So
They can pick their own.
Growing what fruit in the orchards?
Most what they can pick is mostly apples.
Yeah.
Apples, yeah, and yeah, I think most of them. Even they have pears or apricots or cherries and so on. But the most favorite tree is the apple, I think, here.
Okay, yes.
Well,
Apples actually need a fairly cold winter. It's something which I only learned a few years ago. So in Britain, apples grow quite well as well because the winter is cold enough. Now, what is quite interesting was I learned a lot about apples and the temperature, because in India, the problem with climate change is that some of the areas where apples were growing very well now don't grow so well there because it has started to get too warm in the winter. So, for example, if you go up to Manali, Manali is in Himachal Pradesh, and now they grow apples there. Before it was too cold. But 50 miles away, that's where they used to grow apples, and now it's too warm because you have quite a steep, you're going up quite steeply at that in that area. So that means that agriculture has actually had to shift further up for the apples. And now the farmers down in the southern area are growing vegetables. But that also has its effect because it's much more labour intensive. It means that, well, what does labour intensive mean? Do you think? Can you guess? Something is labour intensive.
they have to do a lot to until they come to the point where they can pick the apples?
Yes, well, whatever crop, okay, you need more people working on it. And in India, well, Abby, welcome. Nidhi will probably agree with me, but it's often the women who are doing a lot of the hard work, especially in agriculture. So it's actually also led to a big change in the way of life, because apples don't need too much care. Vegetables do. So now, in the areas where they used to grow apples, the women are having to work much longer hours out in the fields growing vegetables. Okay, Shiny, agriculture in Japan. Shiny, can you hear us?
Yes, but only 20% of Japan's land is suitable for cultivation, so not much agriculture, not much, there's farming in Japan, but
what then, although it's only 20%, what is actually cultivated in Japan?
Most of them is rice.
Okay, rice. Anything else?
Rice, fishing. Fishing, it's not about cultivation, but
well, it's still classed in agriculture, so we'll include fishing.
Okay, then if it is counted, then fishing. Nothing else, I think this.
So
but we're trying to export fruits, high height fruits.
Export or import fruits?
Export. Trying to. Yeah, I know.
Okay, so in Japan has to depend heavily on imports then, yes? Where do you have any idea, where do most of the imported food goods come from?
China.
Okay, China, interesting. Okay, China is exporting to Japan a lot of your food products. Okay, April, would you like to tell us a little bit about agriculture in Belgium?
That is difficult because I don't know a lot about that. But if you said agriculture, is the cattle also, can we add cattle also in the agriculture, or is it only for plants?
I mean, cattle for what? For
cattle?
For meat.
Yeah, for meat.
Yeah, both. That's very much agriculture. So,
because just 2 days ago, it was a scandal discovered here in how do you call that? Wait a minute. The abattoir.
Oh yes.
Yeah, the abattoir, because it was the biggest one in Flanders here. Not in Belgium. Flanders is the half part of Belgium. It is the biggest one, but somebody.
Can I just stop you for a second? Does everyone understand what the word abattoir means? Does anyone not know what an abattoir is? Okay, Marco doesn't know. So April, could you explain what an slaughterhouse?
Yeah, slaughterhouse, Marco. So where they kill the cattle, the pig and the cows. But somebody came there from the animal rights organization, and they found out that the people who works there, they really the animals there, they really suffered it because they were hit. They were sometimes they were killed or slaughtered just like that. And normally they have to give the animals first kind of narcoticum to make the suffer less, but it was not happen like that. And now since yesterday this abattoir is closed, it will come to the court, I think, I don't know, and some supermarkets don't want to have the meat from them anymore, something like that. So that is about the abattoir, about the
okay.
cat. But
no, that's an interesting story, and in fact it's quite important because in the recent years there's been a big move to be much more humane in the way that animals are slaughtered before they go to the butchers and land on your plate. There's a big debate also about halal meat. Do you all understand what I mean by halal meat?
Yeah, they have to kill by using the knife and at once, and you can yeah.
Yes.
And, yes.
So Abhishek, do you know much about halal meat?
Yeah, actually, one of the friend is mine who eats halal meat, so I do have idea at what is it. It's like that you have to. It should be cut at the once. That at once. It should be only cut at the once, and it should die immediately.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
it's like
in Britain, I understand that I'm not sure if they've actually managed to stop it yet, but I believe that the government is looking at banning it because it's felt that it is actually not being done properly and that the animals are actually suffering. So there is a big debate also about the whole process of halal meat, because in theory, I would have thought that it sounds as if it is less cruel, because if the animal is killed instantly, then at least it's not suffering like if in a slaughterhouse, if it's been beaten and it doesn't die immediately. Okay, kosher food, that's interesting. You've raised kosher food, Monique. Can you tell us anything about kosher food?
Well, actually, I'm not. I don't. I mean, we have that thing here, and it's a bit expensive if you want to buy such a product. And but I'm not sure about the whole story behind that, but I think it's also related with what you were talking about and the way they kill animals and how they treat animals. So in order just to, when we eat them, it's like or that I don't know if it's an ideology or a part of some culture. I'm sure it is, but it's more about kill them, but with dignity or something like that. So my sister, she loves that, but I'm not into those things, so I cannot tell.
Okay, well, kosher food's eaten by Jews. I don't actually know so much about the process, but because my understanding of kosher food is more the kind of food. So actually, Jewish people will not eat certain types of food. So they won't eat shellfish, and I'm not even all that sure of the different types of foods that they don't eat. So in the same way that Muslims don't eat pork, there are some foods that Jewish people won't eat. But you might be right. There might also be a particular method of how they kill meat. Yeah. Now, we've got 3 people from India here, so it's quite interesting. Are you all of you Hindu? So Mohit, Abhishek, and Nidhi, are you all Hindu? Yes, so we got 3 yeses here. So let's see, Mohit, you've just joined us. Can you tell us anything about how meat is regarded by Hindus? Okay, so we have 2 vegetarians. Are you vegetarian, Mohit?
Yes, I am.
You're vegetarian as well. Wow. So we have 3 very good Hindu vegetarians, because I have to confess that in Nepal, most of my Hindu friends are not vegetarian. Okay. I only know a little bit about how Buddhists regard meat, and I have had a lot of debate, even with Buddhist monks who like eating meat, that I find that there's a big problem with this, because I thought that Buddhists were not supposed to kill animals. But it seems that it's okay if someone else kills the animal that they're eating. And part of me thinks that there's a bit of hypocrisy in this. Do you know what I mean by hypocrisy? Something is, if we talk about hypocrisy, I think you're all thinking about wonderful dishes from India. But India has the most amazing selection of vegetarian dishes, April. So you don't need to worry about not eating meat in India. Okay, so when I mean hypocrisy, it means that it's a little bit in conflict. There's a conflict. If you say that you should not kill animals, but it's all right to eat an animal that someone else has killed, I would argue, yes, but if you were not going to buy that meat, then the person wouldn't have needed to kill that animal. So do you understand my logic there? Okay, so Markov, you haven't told us anything about agriculture in your country. Could you give us a little summary of what agriculture is like in your country?
In Serbia, I think that we have good abilities for agriculture, but maybe I suppose that that is everywhere around the world, like that people usually tend to go to live in big cities or something like it, and maybe yes, we have a lot of fertile soil, like good for planting. We have some kind of some areas are suitable for planting, some are for farming, like we have one mainly flat terrain, which is good for producing wheat and the other cereals.
Yep.
Yes, and some of like mountain sites, they are good for like for sheep, because or for cows, because this is like the grass is I don't know how to explain it. It's like it's better. I think it's better quality, and like final product is the better after it. And also there are a lot of like nowadays I don't know, but because I live in a city, my parents come from weren't born in Belgrade, but they come from the countryside, and Yes, I know that we have good abilities for developing for planting raspberries in some, but it also depends on one area is good for suitable for one kind of farming or planting some and for raspberries like it's a good it's because everyone who starts doing it expect like a good outcome because and now it's nowadays it's this kind of raspberry can be good good, and here is also I don't know, but I think that mainly very fertilized soils aren't used properly because as I said, a lot of people now living in cities and villages are abandoned, and yes, it's like
yes, I think this is a worldwide
worldwide. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to now spend the rest of the time doing a bit of reading. So let's see. April, would you like to please start us off with the Anglo-Saxon period?
Okay, thank you. The Saxons and the Vikings had open field farming systems. Under the Normans and Plantagenets, fens were drained, woods cleared, and farmland expanded to feed a rising population until the Black Death reached Britain in 1349. This and subsequent epidemics caused the population to fall. 1/3 of the population in England died of the plague between 1349 up to 1350. In consequence, areas of farmland were abandoned. The feudal system began to break down as laborers who were in short supply following the plague demanded wages instead of subsistence and better conditions. Also, there were a series of poor harvests after about 1315, coinciding with some evidence from 3 rings of poor weather across the whole of northern Europe, which continued on and off until about 1375. The population did not recover to 1300 levels for 200 or 300 years.
Okay, thank you. So, agriculture developed quite interestingly in that period. We've got these open farming systems. So this was a very traditional way of farming in the medieval period, where a manor being like a rich landlord. You've all probably watched Downton Abbey. So there you have a manor, okay, and the lord of the manor. So they had then 2 or 3 very large fields. Now, Britain is famous for its small fields which have walls or hedges around them. But in those days, the land was very, very open, and the land was divided into very small strips, and each strip would be cultivated by an individual or a family. And they were called tenants or serfs. Now, they were not paid anything. So they would cultivate the land and they would eat the food that they grew on that land, giving the lord of the manor a certain percentage of it, but there would be no money passing hands. Yeah. Now, we also have in the 14th century plague, the Black Death, okay, which was a huge epidemic that swept across Europe. So not just Britain, but not just England, but all across Europe suffered badly in this period. And so that meant that there were fewer labourers because so many had died. So they were in a much stronger position to be able to start to ask to be paid money instead of just the food that they grew on their land. Then also, there's evidence that there was some bad weather for around about, 60 years or so. Now, if anyone has studied much about climate change, not only are we talking about the climate change of today, but it's been fluctuating. It's been fluctuating over the centuries. So some particular periods were colder than others, and then there was actually a cold period that caused a big problem with the harvests. So this affected the population. Obviously, in the 14th century, the population was much smaller than it is now. Okay, so was there any vocabulary there that you weren't sure about? We've got open field farming, we've got feudal system, which again was this system where tenants or serfs had to work in exchange for the food that they were growing rather than money. Subsistence, do you all understand what subsistence means? Okay, so let's have a volunteer to read us the next paragraph. Who would like to volunteer? Okay, I'll pick on someone. Hermine, would you like to read the next paragraph? Sorry, Mohit, you can read the next one.
Yes, Marianne, of course. Okay. Okay, I'll start.
Yes.
Okay. 15,000 to 1550, when King Henry VIII named himself supreme head of the Church of England in 1531. He set about the dissolution of the monasteries, which was largely complete by 1540. The monasteries had been among the principal landowners in the kingdom, and the crown took over their land, amounting to about 2 million acres. This land was largely sold off to fund Henry's military ambitions in France and Scotland, and the main buyers were the aristocracy and landed gentry. Agriculture boomed as grain prices increased sixfold by 1650. Improvements in transport, particularly along rivers and coasts, brought beef and dairy products from the north of England to London.
Okay, good. Now, 1500, when we talk about dates, years, we'd say 1700 or 1500.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I have said.
So I think you said 15, well, actually, I'm not sure if you said 15,000, which actually would be even not right. Also, wow. Maybe it's quite small to see, but you can see there's a capital W for when. I'm being very fussy here, but the punctuation matters. So when you're reading, unfortunately, I couldn't put it in bold, so it didn't stand out. But we have 1500 to 1750. Then we've got a semicolon. When King Henry VIII named himself supreme head of the Church of England in 1531, he set about the dissolution of the monasteries, which was largely complete by 1540. So you see there are little pauses. Mm-hmm. And when you read the sentence, punctuation helps with the understanding of that sentence, especially if it's quite a long sentence. So that is quite a long sentence. It has 2 commas in it, but 1500 to 1750 is like the heading for the paragraph, because we're first of all talking about 1530, 1540. Yeah. Now,
Okay.
do you know what Henry the Eighth was famous for?
Yes, he had it. He has a lot of women, and some of them were hated.
Okay, he had a lot of women and some of them he beheaded. Well, yes. So the story behind all of this is perhaps worth looking at. Do you understand what it means by dissolution of the monasteries? What do you mean by dissolution of the monasteries?
Where the monks and nuns live in Marianne. It's a monastery.
Yeah, it's to do with the monks. Okay, so I bet it's shiny. No, it's Marco. Marco has put a very good picture there, the Tudors. Okay, so there's a TV series if you're interested in this period, because it is quite interesting. Okay, the dissolution of the monasteries. Monique, Mohit, would you like to read us this paragraph, please? I've just summarized what the dissolution of the monasteries actually means.
Okay. Dissolution of monasteries. Okay. Reformation. King Henry VIII wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon, his first wife, under the Roman Catholic faith. Divorce was not permitted, so Henry declared himself head of the church in place of the Pope. This meant that the Catholic monasteries were no longer allowed to function and were closed down, their land confiscated. Instead of following the Catholic prayer, instead of following Catholic prayer books, alternatives were set up and Britain became Protestant. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, so this is just, it's a very short paragraph for an incredibly interesting and complicated period of history in Britain, but it explains a little bit about what happened and how Britain went off on its own. Britain's quite good at this, isn't it? It's got a long history of wanting to be difficult, yeah? So Henry VIII was the one who actually, well, I suppose he did a bit of a Brexit when it came to the Catholic Church, because he wanted a divorce and he wasn't allowed a divorce as a Roman Catholic. So he set himself up as the head of the church in England. And the Pope, well, no, don't need to worry about the Pope anymore. So, of course, that meant that the Roman Catholic monasteries weren't allowed to continue to function, and he was quite happy to take their land. And in fact, even the Catholic prayer book was altered. Now, it's very complicated because it wasn't just Henry VIII, and there were a lot of theologians, there were a lot of people thinking about religion and with their different ideas. So the timing, it's not as simple as Henry wanted a divorce, he wanted to marry another woman. Okay.
He tried everything.
He tried everything, and at the end of the day, it's pretty well recognized that he had serious venereal diseases, which probably was one of the main reasons why he didn't produce very many children. And it all came really to the fact that he wanted to have a line, he wanted to create a line to the throne, okay? Because with Mary, he didn't have any children, so he wanted another wife. Anne Boleyn gave him Elizabeth I, And I think she was also mother to Edward. But Edward was a sickly child who died when he was a kid. And he had 4 other wives, and none of them produced any children. So somehow I don't really think that it was the wives' fault. Do you? Anyway, I noticed that we have another member with us who I'm sorry I didn't stop earlier. So is it Mohammed Shamshad?
Yeah, it's MD
Okay.
Shamshad. Yeah, Muhammad
Yeah.
Shamshad is sure.
So sorry, your name. What is your name? What should I call you?
Shamshad? Shamshad.
Shamshad. Yes.
Shamshad. Shamshad.
Samsad. Okay. And where do you come from?
Yeah.
Are you also from
I'm
India?
Yeah, I'm from India.
Okay, great. Well, since you have just joined the group, so why don't I ask you to read the next paragraph, please?
Marianne, may I ask something?
Yes.
Because I always think that Henry VIII made that Catholicism change in Protestant, but they call them Anglican, isn't it? Is
yes.
Yes. Is it? It's not the same as Protestant, I think. Yeah?
Well, when we say Anglican, we understand Protestant. You can't be an Anglican without being Protestant, and perhaps Protestant is perhaps a more accurate label that describes the change in the religion, regardless of which country, because of course there were Protestants in other countries. And if you look at the word protestant, so you can guess where that word has come from. Anglican just refers to the British form, so Church of England, Anglican. Yeah, but Protestants and Anglicans are the same. Okay, so let's have this paragraph. Would you like to read for us, please?
I can read. I want to know one thing, that who is speaking? Are you there?
Okay, now you sound
there?
like you're breaking up. I don't know whether it's your connection. Would you like to try again?
Let me. Yeah, I'm saying that who are you? Are you Lynn?
No, I'm Marianne.
Hello?
I'm Marianne.
Maria.
Yeah. Okay, so dissolution of the monasteries, Reformation.
Yeah, I have to do it. Actually, I am using mobile, so that's why I call you.
Okay, well, if you don't...
Where is paragraph? Okay. Yeah, I am reading. Dissolution of the monasteries, Reformation. The Kingdom of Great Britain was created on 1st May 1707 as a result of the Act of Union. Actually, my mind is hanging. As a result of the Act of Union putting into effect the terms of the Treaty of Union. At this time, Jethro Tull, a Berkshire farmer, had recently invented his famous
Okay, maybe we better pass on to someone else to read because we're not getting through very easily. Perhaps Nidhi, would you like to take over? So we've got, at this time, Jethro Tull, a Berkshire farmer.
Okay.
Okay.
Dissolution. Okay, I have to read from start.
No, could you read from Jethro Tull, a Berkshire farmer?
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Can you see it? It's about the 5th line down.
Okay. Yeah. At this time, Jethro Tull, a Berkshire farmer, had recently invented his famous rotating cylinder seed drill. His 1731 book, The New Horse Hoeing Husbandry, explained the system and devices he espoused to improve agriculture. The book had such an impact that its influence can still be seen in some aspects of modern farming. Charles Townshend, a Viscount known as Turnip Townshend, retired from Parliament in 1730, and in the years between then and his death in 1738 introduced turnip farming on a large scale. This created four-crop rotation: wheat, turnips, barley, and clover, which allowed fertility to be maintained with much less fallow land. Clover increases mineral nitrogen in the soil, and clover and turnips are good fodder crops for livestock, which in turn improve the soil by their manure.
Thank you, Nidhi. Okay, so seed drill. Do you all know what that means by seed drill? Well, I've just told you the answer. It's a tool. Okay? It's a thing to make holes in the ground. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we've got a very technical one here that Mohit has posted for us. So this was a period when a lot of inventions and a lot of development was going on to make agriculture more efficient. Okay. A hoe is also another tool which was used, and in fact you can sometimes find them small ones which you use in your garden to actually get out the weeds. Yeah.
Okay.
Were there any other words that you couldn't understand in that paragraph? So,
Device he espoused to improve. What is the meaning of espoused?
sorry, I can't see where you are. Where are you?
It's the 10th line, I think. The new house hoeing husbandry explained the system.
Okay, so he wrote a book. So it's the title of the book.
No, devices he espoused.
It's new idea. Then horse hoeing husbandry. So he was trying to describe the systems and devices, tools that he espoused. So he recommended to improve agriculture. Yeah. And so as we can see from some of the pictures that Mohit has put for us, we've got now much more technical equipment, but based on these inventions that were in the 18th century. Now, I think I mentioned, thank you. That's a very good picture of a hoe. Okay. Now, although it doesn't seem very much, this was quite revolutionary at the time. And it was a period which just came before the Industrial Revolution. But without the food to feed the growing population, we're not going to get very far in an industrial revolution. So let's see, Shiny, would you please read for us the next paragraph? Shiny?
Yes, between 1750 and 1850, the English population nearly tripled, with an estimated increase from 5.7 million to 16.6 million. And all these people had to be fed from the domestic food supply. This was achieved through intensified agriculture and land reclamation from the fens, woodlands, and uplands pastures. The crop mix changed too, with wheat and rye, replacing barley, nitrogen fixing plants such as legumes led to sustainable increased yields. These increased yields, combined with improved farming machinery and then new capitalist ways of organizing labor, meant that increased crop production did not need much more manpower, which freed labor for non-agricultural work. Indeed, by 1850, Britain had the smallest population of its population engaged in farming of any culture in the world at 22%.
Very good. Okay, so we had, let's see, Fens, I just explained, is a particular area in Britain. It's very wet, lots of rivers, and so by land reclamation, so we would say land reclamation, but when you said reclamation or something like that, because it does come from that. If you reclaim something, you get something back. So we would pronounce it slightly differently, but it comes from the word to reclaim. Were there any words that you weren't sure about in that paragraph? Legumes, you hesitated, and I'm sure April knows exactly what this means because it's another French word that
Vegetable.
has been
Vegetable.
vegetables, yeah. So we like to borrow. Anything else in there that you're not sure about? So the point I made was that without this agricultural development, Britain would not have been able to have its industrial revolution. Yeah. Okay, we've just got 3 minutes, but I think we might have just about time for the last paragraph, which will take us, well, it still only takes us not quite into the 20th century, but nearly there. Okay, who would like to read this paragraph? Abhishek? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Here you go.
This period, 1816 to 1836, included a 20-year depression in agriculture that started with the end of the Napoleonic Wars and lasted until 1836. This depression was so severe that landlords as well as tenants suffered financial ruin and large areas of farmland were entirely abandoned. This showed the problem of the ancient landlord and tenant system in running new-style capital-intensive farms, and it caused concern in Parliament. The system began to improve, for example, by distinguishing between farm improvements that the tenant should fund and those the landlord should fund.
Okay. Any words there that you're not so sure about? I don't think there was anything too difficult. No? Yes, pea plants are also legumes. Okay, Monique, would you like to finish with the last paragraph? Because I know if it will show up because I've pasted it, but I seem to have a slow connection, so it's trying to come through.
Okay, I'm here.
Yes.
Which part?
It's taken its time to come through. I've pasted it.
Okay, no problem.
Can you see it? No, you can't.
No, yes.
I can see Mohit, so it must be my connection that's going on a go slow. Okay, maybe then I will just read it quickly so that we finish, and then you have right up to the end of the 19th century. From the end of the Depression in 1836 until Parliament repealed the Corn Laws in 1846, agriculture flourished. The repeal of the Corn Laws steadied prices, though agriculture remained prosperous. At that time, Parliament was concerned with the issue of tenant rights, i.e. the sum payable to an outgoing tenant for farm improvements that the tenant had funded. And if crops were in the ground when the tenants left, compensation for their value. This was down to local custom, which might vary from place to place. In 1848, a parliamentary committee examined the possibility of a standardized system, but a bill on the matter was not passed until 1875. Okay, I obviously have a slow connection working here because I see that the paragraph still hasn't shown itself on your screens. But we have come to 15:01, which means that I think our time is up. I'll put what we've read today up on the site, and I think we'll continue with agriculture on Monday, but we'll have a look at perhaps some, I don't know, maybe you should do some homework over the weekend and perhaps try and do a little bit of research on an interesting fact. I thought that April's story about the controversy over abattoirs, very interesting. So maybe if you could try and find a similar story that has anything to do with agriculture, which is current right now in the news, and then you could share it with us. So do you think you could do that? Okay.
Have you heard about vertical farming?
Well,
Marianne?
that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
That. Okay. And those of you in India, I think there are some quite interesting projects on quite innovative forms of agriculture. Certainly I've seen for instance, in Nepal, I've seen things that can be grown in water which help the fish. I don't know, there are all sorts of projects. So if you could try and think of something that is particular to your country that is interesting. Okay then, so bye for now and see you on Monday.